Welcome to the Dumpster Dive. I'm your host, Digby the Cat, because the New World Order is nowhere near as fun as the Nia World Order. Tonight, we start off, as we have every other Dumpster Dive, with the current situation in Iran. The Iran conflict continues. Well over a month into it, and it's a stalemate. Insofar, it seems to be a stalemate. The USA continues its strikes all over the place. USA continues strikes, including a rather substantial strike on an Iranian missile base in the city of, I am mispronouncing this, Isfahan. I'm assuming I mispronounced that, but I might not have. Apparently, quite an impressive strike. Trump was very proud of it. Apparently. But the overall ability of the Iranian government to continue its attacks on shipping and limit transit has unfortunately been unaffected so far. Strikes against surrounding areas continue. And unfortunately for the Americans, they have lost a number of aircraft. They have lost a number of aircraft, not least of all, one of their AWACS aircraft. An E-3 Sentry apparently was destroyed at the Prince Sultan Air Base by the Iranians back on the 29th. Have we got a... here we are. Destruction of the U.S. Air Force E-3 Sentry aircraft at the Prince Sultan Air Base. Yeah, I don't think they're fixing that one. For those who don't understand what these aircraft are, these are the aircraft that fly around with a giant-ass radar dish on them. These things are absolutely essential in modern warfare. They are a key element of your ability to understand the battle space, understand what's going on. This one is completely wow. They hit it right on the radar dish. They did not want this thing ever working again, did they? That is a look at that. That is a surprisingly precise strike. That is a surprisingly precise strike. Thank you again to S2 Underground for providing us with this delightful map. As you can see, the number of little blotches indicating strikes continues to grow. Unfortunately. With Tehran continuing to get the lion's share of the blasting. But as it stands, it doesn't really seem like much has actually meaningfully changed. Ships are still only transiting in very limited numbers. Minefields are at this point all but confirmed. The interesting part, though, is that the Iranians are allowing ships to go through. As we mentioned last week, they have seemed to be operating a toll booth system. Unfortunately, for the most part, it seems they are limiting the ships that they allow through, whether in quantity or by affiliation. For the most part, Chinese ships seem to be getting through unmolested. But again, gotta go through there. The American naval forces continue to hover around in the Arabian Sea rather than getting close, which is not terribly surprising, all things considered. Though I imagine some are edging their way into the Gulf of Oman here and there, but for the most part, their efforts appear to be staying outside. Let's see. Got the massive strikes. The main issue that is cropping up now is the question of what's going to happen next. A stalemate does not last forever. Currently, the Iranian government is being very clear publicly that they do not support a ceasefire unless certain conditions are met. One is, of course, an immediate American withdrawal, compensation for damage, and some manner of guarantee that they will not be attacked by the USA in the future. Again, the guarantees against future attacks seems to be a key reoccurring theme. This seems to be a key reoccurring theme, which makes President Trump's statements all the more confusing, as he has repeatedly said now that they are talking to someone in Iran someone in charge, and that this person in private is very, very much willing to make a deal. They're begging for a deal. Nobody knows who he's talking to. Obviously, he's not saying. But as we mentioned last week, both sides have incentive to lie here. Both sides have incentive to lie. Which brings us to another interesting element of it. President Trump has indicated that the USA may simply leave, stating that it's not the USA's problem, other countries can deal with it, and they're just going to leave at some point, maybe, possibly. I doubt they'll go through with that. I doubt they'll go through with that. Because at this point, it would look like they're running away with their tails between their legs, and that is not a look the Americans are going to tolerate. Especially not someone like President Trump. He would never tolerate that. So, I think realistically, all this talk of a more reasonable regime, all this talk of he's repeatedly stated that a great many ships are passing through the Strait of, a tremendous number of ships are sailing through the Strait of Hormuz, apparently. He has said in an interview or some such shit. I think realistically at this point, Trump is stalling. I think at this point, Trump is stalling. This is my opinion. I think what he's doing is he's saying whatever he thinks will get oil prices to calm down a bit, whilst the USA continues to move forces into the region. As we know, they are moving 2 Marine Expeditionary Forces into the region, as well as a large number of paratroopers. Now, obviously, 2 Marine Expeditionary Forces and 2,000 or so paratroopers, that is a sizable force that you could do something with, but it is not an occupation force. This is a force that you could use to, say, secure a landing zone or something important that you then move more troops into. Insofar, there has been no indication of them moving the larger forces needed for a meaningful occupation. And obviously, there are 2 main missions I've seen being floated around. Obviously, we have to remember that the politicians, they do leak things out to the media to gauge public opinion and to prep people to just accept whatever it is they're up to. And 2 main proposals have seemed to be floating around in regards to what these troops will be doing. Obviously, taking Kark Island is one that's very popular, and Trump has repeatedly said he wants Iran's oil, which makes his statements about simply leaving all the more unlikely. He wants the oil, apparently. Obviously, taking Kark Island would be quite difficult, as we mentioned last week. You'd have to sail the forces all the way through here, well in range of basically every Iranian weapon system, and through a minefield. Unless you fancy going through the toll booth, which, yeah, that doesn't sound like a good idea. Trying to take a carrier group through there, trying to take any meaningful number of ships through there at once would probably not go very well. And of course, American anti-sea mine capabilities are rather limited right now. And obviously, you have the paratrooper situation, which is even worse. You would realistically be deploying them from Saudi Arabia, which is the most rational place to deploy them from. Iraq isn't an option. Kuwait? Maybe, but I think Saudi Arabia would be the more likely option. Unfortunately, that would not be a good idea either, because you would still need to get a larger force through here, through the strait, to there to reinforce them. Otherwise, regardless of the quality of troops relative to the Iranian troops, they're going to wind up like the Russian paratroopers at the start of the Ukraine war and get cut off and, well, completely fucked. You don't send in paratroopers and expect them to hold terrain. They are there to disrupt and to take something, not to hold it. If you can't reinforce them, don't bother using them. And of course, it's also worth pointing out that American paratroopers have not done a combat drop in almost half a century. Their last combat job was the American intervention in Panama, sometime in the 80s, as I recall. So while they are very well drilled, I have no doubt, they're a light force. They're not experienced in this regard. It would not go well, I don't think. It would not go well. So it's debatable what the Americans are planning. The forces they have moved into the area could simply be leverage, a way to put pressure on the Iranians. Hey, we have forces in the area. They are reportedly, according to some, moving special forces into the area. They might be up to something silly. Who knows what they're planning? Another element that is constantly coming up in some media channels is seizing the Iranian nuclear material, which we went over last week, is not really an option. It is deep within the country. It is potentially buried under many, many tons of rubble. Yeah, it's not an option. It's simply not an option. You could not get it out. You couldn't even get at it realistically, even if you did manage to take the facility. What is left of it, anyways. And of course, as I mentioned, President Trump is threatening to leave, and he seems to be trying to use this as a way to push the issue onto other nations, basically saying, hey, Europe, you deal with our mess for us, please. Obviously, this could backfire horribly for Trump in terms of his objectives. Because the European nations at this point would be heavily incentivized to take the most damaging option for the Americans, which would be dropping all sanctions on Iran and basically saying, hey, we will guarantee security in the Strait of Hormuz and keep the Americans out if we get a discount. If I was involved in the EU Commission, or if I was the French president, or I had his ear, that is what I would be pushing. Because it's opportunity. And if there's one thing you should always do in international politics and geopolitics and strategy, it's exploit any opportunity that arises. And on the note of exploiting opportunity, oh look, the French are moving into the sort of area. The Charles de Gaulle Carrier Strike Group is operating around Cyprus right now. Now, at the moment, all they seem to be doing is just sitting around and waiting. Nothing terribly exciting. And the forces aren't exactly substantial. 1 aircraft carrier on its own, 2 frigates. 3 frigates, and a replenishment ship. That's not really much of a force. But it is interesting that they are moving into the area. Obviously, the French will look to exploit the situation as much as they can because they are the French. And speaking of carriers, the Ford's replacement in the theater has been basically confirmed. The Bush. The George H.W. Bush has departed Norfolk for the Middle East. It's going to take it a while to get there. But obviously their involvement and the involvement of their carrier group signals the USA's intent to continue the conflict. And of course, this conflict is having wider problems. As mentioned earlier, Trump seems to be taking every opportunity he can to calm the oil markets. And it's not really working. Oil prices are going up, availability is going down, and some nations are introducing fuel rationing, such as Indonesia, which has announced fuel rations and mandated work from home, only for civil servants so far. And of course, it is also regulating the amount that people can buy, which is even more serious. That is when they are introducing purchasing limits. That's kind of the point where it's not good. That is the point where it is not good. China has continued its industrial wind down with some sectors being told use less energy, open less. contributing to China's existing economic woes, though reportedly Chinese ships are now able to freely transit the strait. Sort of. Limited numbers, people. For a strait that once handled a very, very, very large quantity of shipping, a trickle is not going to make a huge difference. The interceptor situation is also getting worse, with the USA attempting to relocate missile systems from Eastern Europe to the Middle East. These missile systems, in this case a Patriot missile system, belong to other nations. In this case, it was a Polish Patriot missile system being operated by the Polish military, and they said no. The remarks follow a report from Polish Daily. I am not even going to attempt to pronounce that, alleging US officials had asked Warsaw to shift one of its Patriot batteries to the Middle East. As Iran's retaliatory strikes on US Gulf allies puts a growing strain on air defense stockpiles. Poland had not been singled out. It's apparently the USA is approaching multiple NATO allies with two questions. It's looking for batteries for Ukraine and also for the Middle East, but not the Gulf, to protect NATO installations. There was no real pressure on Poland, it was just a question sent to all allies. And apparently everyone is saying no. Everyone is saying no, which is unsurprising because the USA has hardly been making friends of late. The USA has hardly been making friends of late, so it's unsurprising he's getting those responses. The overall situation is, like I said, it's a stalemate right now. Nobody seems able to make a decisive move until situations on the ground change, which means most likely either the Iranians do something drastic, such as completely close the strait, or somebody does something stupid, which is also certainly a possibility, or the Americans get insufficient forces into the area that they can force a change in the situation. The Americans do seem to be moving more forces into the area, but they don't seem to be moving the sort of forces they would need. Iran's a rather large country. There's not really a good spot to invade from, as we see here with the topographic part of the map. It's quite the mountainous area. The Zagros Mountains do not look particularly inviting. And if you want to get at the juicy meat, you got to get through those mountains. Obviously, Kark Island is a vital part of the Iranian economy, despite its size. So taking that would definitely be a blow, but holding it would be a whole different matter. And obviously, the USA, the Trump administration, is not terribly keen on just outright destroying it because that would cause massive damage to the global energy economy, which is still, for the most part, priced in dollars. So any major upsets on the energy economy do affect the Americans. Obviously, as well, apparently the Iranian toll booth is still demanding that ships be carrying fuel that has been purchased with Chinese currency, which makes the situation a little more tenuous for the Americans, because if they allow that to continue, that could weaken the petrodollar, which would obviously affect the American economy quite dramatically, as it would diminish demand for the US dollar. Overall, we are just going to have to wait and see how this develops. I wouldn't put my money on anyone at this stage. The Americans might walk away. They might look at the potential costs of a land invasion, even if it be simply of Kark Island, and go, you know what, not worth it, we're backing out, we're dipping. Bye-bye. But they might also decide to go all in, which wouldn't be a good option in my view. It wouldn't be a good option, in my view. There is one notable development, though, on the negotiation side, outside of obviously the confusion as to who Trump is talking with. Reportedly, J.D. Vance, who has been notably quiet during the entirety of this war, basically vanished off the face of the earth. Reportedly, J.D. Vance is now resurfaced and is going to be leading negotiations going forward. The existing negotiation team, including Trump's grandson, Jared Kushner, will still be grandson? Stepson? I forget. Son-in-law. That was it. Son-in-law. Son-in-law. Jared Kushner will still be involved. These people are obviously, the existing team are not well regarded by the Iranians for their whole, negotiating and then attacking during negotiations thing. But Vance is reportedly viewed more positively by the Iranians due to his general opposition to foreign interventions. We'll have to see how that one goes. Obviously, for Vance, there is multiple layers to the issue because for him, he has to consider his post-Trump political career. But we'll see how that goes. His stance has reportedly been, to this point, quiet. He opposes the war, but once Trump was all in, Trump decided they were going in, he was all in. So we'll see what that translates to in the negotiation stage and whether or not President Trump even realistically allows negotiations, as they could just be a cover for another American attack. A distraction, if you will. Moving over to the UK and censorship in general, the UK government is looking to fast-track online censorship. Basically, they want to make it so that rather than having to pass acts of parliament each time, they will instead be able to just do it, update it constantly as they please. It's not good. Obviously, they want to involve Parliament as little as possible. And they are basically doing this by in the same way that they do expedited budgets, wherein they give MPs very limited time and opportunity to look at what's being pushed through, what's being voted on. So he would be looking to do annual updates to what is being censored. Rolling provisions, it's called. And as it says here, a polite term for permanent fast-tracked legislative pipeline where the government gives itself new censorship and surveillance powers year after year with barely any debate. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. And of course they are justifying it with the children. They always justify it with the children. It's not good. This man is an idiot. But he's a consistent idiot. He's a consistent idiot. Obviously, it's debatable whether or not he'll manage to get that through and how long it'll last. But realistically, once the government gets this power, they are unlikely to give it up. Regardless of who gets in, they'll just use it for themselves. Unfortunate, but that is the way things are going. But on more positive news, Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, has made some updates to how the site operates and their algorithm. They have changed it so that certain countries are basically, shall we say, deranked. Apparently, India and Nigeria are now basically cut off from the majority of Twitter. And for some baffling reason, English language Twitter users are seeing a lot of Japanese content. And this is, to be frank, absolutely brilliant. Everybody is loving it. I'm not even joking. Everybody is absolutely adoring all of this. And it has sort of created a new wave of Japan, America, like, mutual love, which is hilarious to me. Like, all the American, you got all the American users and all the Japanese. all the American users going, yay, they love us, and be the America that Japan thinks you are. And I personally have been getting a lot of stuff about maids. I don't know why. Wait, sound on. Got my headset just turned on. Oh, classic. Very classic. Very much a classic. It's adorable. It's hilarious. And hopefully it never changes. Hopefully it is never changes. Hopefully this never changes. But it probably will eventually. Until then, if you're an English language Twitter user, get on Twitter and enjoy Japan. Because Japan has come to the world. And in other good news, Google has found a way to operate LLMs with considerably less RAM. They have unveiled their TurboQuant AI compression algorithm. Now, this doesn't reduce the amount of RAM required for training, reportedly. It reduces the amount of memory required to operate the AI, which is still a absolutely massive boost. It reportedly, in the wake of this, stock prices in AI companies declined quite considerably. Micron stock price. Let's see, 5 days. Yep, and there you go. This was, when was this announced? Oh no, that's the OpenAI one. 2 days ago. Ha. Uppity. This is Micron Technology, by the way. One of the big memory manufacturers. An American company who make a lot of memory. Here we go. We got it's a gradual decline. Let's go back a month. So they peaked at around $460 odd per share back on the 18th of March, and then it just started going. Wee. Then it started dipping back up. It started ticking back up, and then back down again. Losing quite a bit of value. It's lost quite a bit of value over the last month. So I imagine some people were much more aware of this than the general public. As well as that, OpenAI is reportedly stepping back from a lot of its purchasing requests. Spending cuts at OpenAI have hit memory prices. So the Rampocalypse might be coming to an end. Rampocalypse might be coming to an end. Obviously, it will take time for this to obviously filter through to the general public. It'll take time for this to filter through to the general public, but the Rampocalypse might be over. That means the Steam machine might finally come. Gaben does it again. Does nothing. Wins. My man. My man. He does nothing and he wins again. He can't keep getting away with this. Obviously, it's a pleasant change, but there is an alternative side to this. Multiple memory manufacturers have committed to building new facilities. They have already committed to building more facilities, more production. Construction has begun on multiple sites. Equipment has been ordered. These facilities are reportedly going to be built because once you're at that point, once you've broken ground, too much money is invested. You can't turn it all around. This means we might not just be going to reduced memory prices. We might be entering another memory glut, meaning prices will plummet. Obviously, AI could still chew up a lot of that. AI could chew up a lot of that. Actually, that reminds me. There has been talk recently. There has been talk of AI heat pollution picking up again. Reportedly, studies of areas around AI data centers have shown that temperatures can increase by a couple of degrees in the surrounding area. Unsurprisingly, this is very heavy equipment, a lot of cooling equipment. So it's unsurprising that they are generating heat islands. Reportedly, heat islands visible from space using thermal equipment. Thermal camera equipment. This is in conjunction with other issues, such as infrasound pollution, which is rather unpleasant for humans, causes a number of issues, health issues, and psychological issues if your exposure is long term. Being around these facilities is not pleasant. And obviously, as construction continues on yet more data centers, we might find ourselves in a situation where the health and environmental impacts have to be taken into greater consideration. Obviously, if an area has its area temperature boosted by a couple of degrees, that is going to affect larger weather patterns. That is potentially not a good thing. But with turbo quant, maybe that won't happen. Maybe the data centers we've got are the data centers we will have. Maybe the pop bubble is finally popping. Maybe OpenAI is going to get fucked. One can but hope. Obviously, for now, it's unlikely to follow through. It's unlikely to have an immediate effect. But we'll see what happens. The future is looking bright. And whatever you want to say, at least we still have Japanese Twitter. At least we still have Japanese Twitter. For now, until Elon Musk takes it away from us. Until Elon Musk says, no, you're not allowed that anymore. And I think that's about everything for today. Obviously, some things are looking up, some things are looking down. Hopefully the conflict in Iran ends one way or another soon. Until next time, make sure to look after yourselves, keep your heads down. Maybe wait on buying any new computer hardware to see if prices go down. Until next time, make sure to look after yourselves. And I'll see you all when I do. This has been the Dumpster Dive for the 31st of the 3rd, 2026. And I was your host, Digby the Cat. Bye-bye now.